liked to fancy himself a thinker. And I remember when the Rubik's Cube was all the rage. And I had one summer. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to fix the Rubik's Cube. You know, I knew every side had to have the same colors, and I had no rhyme or reason. I was just working on it. And, you know, I was getting nowhere. And I remember my grandpa said, "What are you doing over there? I see you messing with that for hours. You're not going to solve it that way." He said, I'll tell you how you solve it. I mean, he took it from me, and he put it on his desk, and he used to smoke a pipe. I remember he'd read the Wall Street Journal, and he'd start smoking that pipe, and he'd just hold it in his hand. He wouldn't turn the first turn on it, and he'd just set it there. And he'd look at it, and he'd put it back on the desk, and he'd just stare at it. And he'd be thinking about it. I'm like, what is his problem? You're not going to get the Rubik's Cube by just looking at it. But he was staring at it for a long time, and he just kept it there on his desk. I remember he kept it overnight, and he'd get up the next day and do the same thing. And then one day, I remember he picked it up and he started turning it. And inside of 5 minutes, he had that thing perfectly completed. And he said, I figured it out. There's always a rhyme. He said, there's always a reason to anything like this. And before you just go off pell-mell to solve it, you need to figure out the principles behind it. And I think that's what's beautiful about being a Christian, is that we're able to solve the Rubik's Cube, not by dumb luck or chance, but because we understand that it was created by somebody who loves order and who loves perfection. And our machines, the work of our hands, whatever it may be, music or literature or putting a roof on, whatever you're doing, it should have that, it should be clever. Our creation should betray a faith in the Creator. And by that, restoring our image of Him. The next thing I want you to see in here very briefly is that a machine should be instrumental. Look at verses 18 to 21. He says here, as for their rims, they were lofty and awesome, and the rims of all four of them were full of eyes round about. That sounds like that could be an advertisement for some of our body shops in town, as they nine out their cars. Anyway. And verse 19, and whenever the living beings moved, the wheels moved with them. And whenever the living beings rose from the earth, the wheels rose also. And wherever the Spirit was about to go, they would go in that direction. And the wheels rose close beside them, for the Spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. And whenever those went, these went. And whenever those stood still, these stood still. And whenever those rose from the earth, the wheels rose close beside them, for the Spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. I like here in verse 18 that Ezekiel said that the wheels had eyes. The wheels had eyes, but they didn't have a will. The wheels were made to follow, but not to lead. By saying that they had eyes all along the rims, and they had lots of eyes, what it meant was that these wheels were perfectly designed to follow. They were spying and looking out for where the living beings were moving. And that's really the purpose of a machine and the things that we create, which is to follow, to be an instrument of the Word. The Word is paramount. The wheel's glory in this account here was simply its accompaniment. The only thing that brought glory to these wheels, besides their appearance and workmanship, was the fact that they got to stand by the side of the Spirit, right? They got to accompany the Word wherever it went. And that should be the same outlook that we have. You know, John Williams is probably one of the finest composers of scores for movies today. He's done movies. He's done scores for movies after movie after movie. Henry Mancini used to be a great one of years gone by. But you know, when John Williams, he doesn't make a composition, he doesn't compose a large score and then hand it to Spielberg and say, here, make a movie out of this. Where he increases the tension, you know, Spielberg's going to write some bit of tension where it's just a nice lullaby, where there's just a nice dialogue or a love scene or whatever. That's not how it works. Instead, John Williams watches the movie and then he writes the score to correspond with what the author wants to accomplish. And that's in essence what the purpose of the wheels are here. They're instrumental. And anything that we create, anything that we build, any machines that we build, our creative impulse should always be instrumental. It should always look to correspond with what God is doing and where He is going. You know, Moses might have had a good architectural eye and good taste. But God would not have dwelt in that ark if it was of Moses' own design. If you want to go and have some fun reading this afternoon, it's not real fun reading, but if you want to have some interesting reading, Read the latter part of the book of Exodus this afternoon and see how specific God was in how he wanted that ark built, how he wanted the curtains made, and how he wanted the whole house to be constructed. He was real particular about it. And he was not going to dwell in any house that was not built exactly to his specifications. And when Moses set about to write those things down, and when God's people later set about to build that thing, they had to follow it to the letter, to the T, if they wanted God to dwell there. And it's the same thing with our machines. Our construction machines must always be with an eye to what God is doing. Whether it be what we're trying to build here with this church, what you're trying to build in your own home, what you're trying to do with your hands, or your mind, with your pen, with your instrument, whatever it is that you're trying to do, I hope you understand that the Spirit is not going to dwell in it. God is not going to dwell in it if it's not to his specifications. The work of our hands should have eyes, not a will. Right? The work of our hands, the construction of this church, what we're doing as a people and as a body, it should have eyes, and eyes only, to follow, not to lead. I really hope that, I love how nimble and agile these wheels are. And I love how he said that when the living beings came to a complete stop, so did the wheels. If the living beings were saying nothing and doing nothing, the wheels were doing nothing. And if those living beings tore off in one direction, the wheels were right there with them. They could go up or down, east or west. How nimble and agile is your home? How nimble and agile is this church? How nimble and agile are the gifts that God has given you when you're using them in whatever he's called you to do? Well, one last point, and this is an important one, but a simple one, as a machine should be sanctified. I'm not going to reread them, but in verses 20 and 21, Ezekiel mentions twice that the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. It's kind of fun to talk about. I love the wheel within a wheel, and the spirit being in the wheels. It's a nice idea. I wonder if have you ever wondered what the man who was walking into that Mesopotamian forest with a saw in one hand and the blueprints in the other, as he was looking for that perfect acacia tree to cut down and to make into the box that God was going to dwell in. I wonder sometimes, as he was walking into that forest, did he want a lovely ark that God would not make his home? I wonder if as they were building that box with its gold overlay and with its acacia wood and the way he wanted it cut and beveled and everything else, I wondered sometimes if they ever really cared whether or not God would see fit to inhabit it or dwell in it. Did he want a Jerusalem that God, did those builders of that city, did they want a Jerusalem that had God outside the walls instead of inside them? I wonder if, as he was crafting that box, if he could consider or think about a box, however beautiful, that God would not dwell in. I don't know. But I know that for my life, I don't want to toil and labor for nothing. In the 127th Psalm, Solomon writes that unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. And unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake for nothing. We're spending a lot of time in our lives working and toiling and laboring and staying up and losing sleep. I don't want to toil and labor for nothing. I want, with what I make, what I build, what I construct, I want the Spirit to be in it. I want it to be sanctified. I want it to be sacred. Whatever it is, whatever you're building, whatever you're constructing, I want the Spirit to be in it. Let us live set apart, and let us build for that which is set apart. I want to live a holy life, and I want what I build to serve holiness and righteousness as well. Let's pray together.